From the studios of Staten Island Community Television, you're watching In the Bleachers, the TV show for the world's most passionate sports fans. Hello, everyone. I'm the guy who just got myself a good slice of pizza thanks to the people from Let the Good Times Roll, also known as Jaime Hixson.
Hi, I'm a guy currently without a slice of pizza. Thank you very much. Also known as Eric Rosen.
This was the last slice, by the way.
I know.
Shout out to all the people over at Let the Good Times Roll, from Vito Picone himself, to David, to Vinny, to Anthony Oberg, to Adrian, to everyone involved in that show for always doing such a good job making the good times roll. And we are so happy that you could join us this evening. And yes, we are taking phone calls. It's 718-727-0143. And if you want to have your story told about anything that's going on in sports here on Staten Island, then you can let us know about it by contacting us through our In the Bleachers Facebook page, which, by the way, is running past episodes of the show. And you can also contact us on my personal YouTube page, which also has past episodes of the show. And you can also contact us through Facebook and Instagram and also Twitter. Now, we've got a whole bunch of different stuff going on. It's been a little quiet ever since the Super Bowl ended because lately it's been the All-Star game and the trade deadline in basketball and hockey. But I got some really great news. It's time for spring training, which means baseball season is here. Pitchers and catchers have already reported. The position players are going to be making their way in about a couple of days. And then the first preseason games are going to be played really shortly. The Yankees start their season this coming next Tuesday, to be exact. And the Mets start their spring next Wednesday. And just to give you an idea about how exciting things are with both the Yankees and the Mets, not only did the Mets set themselves up for another run at the National League pennant, they've also set themselves up for a really serious run at the World Series Championship, which, by the way, is now, they're going to be celebrating their 30-year anniversary of their last title. And guess how they're going to do it? They're going to be wearing the uniforms of their 1986 championship team for every Sunday home game this season, which means you're going to be seeing them with the pinstripes and the orange and blue stripes down each side of the sleeve, and the orange and blue stripes, I think, down each side of their uniform pants as well. So they're going to be taking this championship run really seriously in more ways than one.
Oh, without a doubt. This is really going to be a great year to watch this Mets organization. The moves they made, the trade acquisition of Neil Walker from Pittsburgh. Granted, his numbers were not stellar last year, but he is an upgrade at second base defensively over Daniel Murphy. May not have his bat, which of course Washington now has, but I think Neil Walker could really surprise people and could have a breakthrough season. Alejandro De Aza, the move they made to get him for 1 year, that really was a bench move. That was really to add depth to the bench. He's the guy that's going to come in pinch hitting situations or your occasional weekend games, mostly on Sundays when they need an outfielder. He's not going to be he's not your everyday starter. That's for certain. Yoenis Cespedes, though, the commitment he's shown already by arriving to camp early after acquiring a 3-year, $75 million deal in which there is a 1-year opt-out is showing me and you and every Mets fan that he's seriously committed to this team for next season. And on top of what he brought last year when he was acquired from Detroit, in the last 40 games, the Mets won 25-15 since he came to the team. It started that whole run for us that took us to the World Series. He really changed the dynamic of the organization. So I'm really happy that the Mets made the move to get him, and I'm really happy that he didn't get one of those gargantuan $100 million deals. I'm really thrilled about that.
And it also helped that Cespedes was actually willing to take a short-term deal for less money just to stay with the team. Keep in mind, he's signed for 3 years technically, but he has an opt-out clause after this coming season, which means maybe he'll declare free agency again. If he has another good season, maybe he won't. But the bottom line is the Mets front office really got creative when it came to deciding to bring this guy back for next year. When you think about it, they really didn't do that much during their offseason. There was trading for Walker, signing De Aza, re-signing Cespedes. There's also signing Antonio Bastardo, the longtime reliever who pitched for many years with the Phillies and then spent last year with the Pirates.
I think he could really, another diamond in the rough that nobody will really expect. That could really help the relief corps, because that's been a really big problem with the Mets. Even when they were not a contending team, they've always had issues with their bullpen. So this could be the move that maybe solidifies and helps the bullpen in the 7th inning. You know, because that's what he is. He's a 7th, 8th inning kind of pitcher. He's not your guy that you're going to bring in to close and all that. But he could be a good setup man this year.
When you think about it, the Mets actually improved their bullpen quite a bit, because after Jeody Familia, who's their closer, you've got Bastardo, who's now going to be the setup man, and they also re-signed Jerry Blevins, a guy who pitched great for them the first month and a half of the season before being lost for the year because he got hurt. So when you think about it, this is a really solid trio that the Mets are going to have to try and close the door on the opposition when they take over for a guy like Harvey or Syndergaard or DeGrom or Steven Matz or Bartolo Colon. And there's also the matter of Zach Wheeler. He's going to be making his return from Tommy John surgery this summer. When you think about it, who's to say that the Mets are not going to repeat in the Eastern Division? Because when you look at this division, one team after another, you've got the Mets, you've got the Nationals, whose pitching staff has gotten weaker after losing Jordan Zimmerman, and there's also the matter of what's going to happen with Steven Strasburg, because he's going to be an unrestricted free agent at the end of the year. But there's the one constant for that team, Bryce Harper.
And not just Bryce Harper, but the move they made to get Daniel Murphy, as I mentioned earlier. That's another bat they add to their lineup to go along with Bryce Harper. And then they made the deal to get Ben Revere to be in their outfield. And they got Bronson Arroyo. This is one of the most this is a crazy minor league deal. It's only a $2 million deal, but he's really competing for that number 5 spot in the rotation with Tanner Roark. So that's going to be really interesting to watch at Nationals training camp, spring training this summer. And then they got Burke Badenhop, who's been bounced around so many teams, and Matt Belisle as well, competing for spots in the relief corps.
Yep. And then after those two, right now, I think it's safe to say it's going to be a 2-team race in the East, because after that, the Phillies are rebuilding, although look out for them because their farm system is really on the up and up. And then there's the Braves.
Well, you mentioned the Phillies. Jorge Alfaro, that's a guy really to look at. J.P. Crawford, Nick Williams, and Roman Quinn right there, with Mark Appel and Jake Thompson right there. So they are a rebuilding organization. They're getting rid. Jimmy Rollins is not there anymore. Chase Utley is not there anymore. Howard is a strikeout waiting to happen. This is not the team from 2006 that competed with the Mets.
Nope, not even.
And you know what? This is a team that really, and they got Edward Mujica too. That was a good move to get him in their relief corps right there. Then you got the Miami Marlins, who now have new skipper, of course, Don Mattingly, along with hitting coach Barry Bonds, which I know is not your favorite move that they made.
I love the Don Mattingly move. He's going to bring a lot of stability into that clubhouse. But Barry Bonds, they couldn't do better to hire a hitting instructor than Barry Bonds. The single most controversial subject, probably in Major League Baseball history, if you don't count Pete Rose.
I think what's the thing, focusing away from Bonds and all that, because believe me, that's going to be a lot of attention on him when he goes to training camp every time for the Marlins. Really the thing that people have to focus about the Marlins is, one, the health of Jose Fernandez, their ace pitcher. He has to be healthy this year. He's got to be in that. Then the acquisition they made to get Wei and Chin to be the number 2. that was a huge move. They needed somebody who can take the pressure off of Fernandez and make that and give them a 1-2 punch in that rotation.
It's funny that you mentioned health, because what about Giancarlo Stanton
Oh,
and his health?
Oh, that is, considering last year he signed the largest deal in Major League Baseball history, 13 years, $325 million. This is really the year where he's going to have to break out and justify that contract.
Do you think that he might want to get a second chance on deciding whether he wanted to sign that contract? Because keep in mind, the only reason why he signed that deal is because he was led to believe that the Marlins were going to actually build a contender around him, and they have not even come close to that yet. I mean, granted, some of the moves that they made were pretty decent, hiring Mattingly, getting Wei-Yin Chen, but at the same time, exactly where do you see any strengths aside from Stanton's bat? They do have a couple of other good players in their batting order, Kristen Yelich being one of them.
Yes, and Marcell
Ozuna as well.
And you know what? Denny Echevarria could be another a good asset they have. They have some young hitters for this organization for years to come. They just got to bring it all together. And I think Don Mattingly is that guy that can actually get the best at them. And you know what? Yes, Barry Bonds controversial, but maybe he can give his pearls of wisdom of don't do what I did and actually teach them, the fundamentals of hitting and getting the best out of them as well.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the
finally. Go ahead, Eric. Go ahead.
I'm sorry, you were about to say.
I was about to say the finally in the Eastern Division, there's a team that has long set the standard for doing things the right way when it comes to developing prospects. The Braves.
Oh, without a doubt.
A lot of people are saying that you give them 2 more years, they might be a contender once again.
You look at their prospects like Ozzie Albies, Malik Smith, and Dansby Swanson, Sean Newcomb, Aaron Blair, and Lucas Sims. These are guys that are going to be really watched. People are going to be watching out for them at Braves camp. The number 5 starter job, like the Nationals, there's going to be a lot of emphasis on that. William Perez, Tyrell Jenkins, Ryan Weber, even Julius Chaston, who was a star with the Colorado Rockies. Mm-hmm. Kyle Kendrick's been bounced around, and David Holmberg.
Yep.
So there's going to be a bunch of players going for that number 5 spot. And this is where Julio Teheran is going to have a really great season.
All right.
He had a terrible 2015. A really terrible 2015 season statistically. Not as many wins as he would have liked. This is the year where he really has to shine.
Now, going to the West Coast, there's been a lot of talk about how competitive the Western Division is going to be. You've got last year's division champions, which just so happen to be the Dodgers. You've got the Diamondbacks, who have slowly but surely grown by leaps and bounds. A lot of people are saying that Paul Goldschmidt could be the best player at his position in the National League. You've got the Giants. This is an even-numbered year. Do you think that there's a chance the Giants could probably win their 4th title in the last 7 seasons?
Oh, without a doubt. Look at the moves they made. They spent a combined $251 million to get Denard Span, to get Johnny Cueto from the World Series winning Royals, and Jeff Samardzija, who's been ping-ponged in Chicago between the White Sox and the Cubs. Now he's pitching for a really legit contender for the Giants, and you go you team him up with Madison Bumgarner, the Giants could be this close to being unbeatable out west. And Chris Heston, too.
And Chris Heston as well, a guy who, if I'm not mistaken, was the one that threw the no-hitter against the Mets last summer.
He did. He was really announced. He had a breakout 2015 season. I can't wait to see how he repeats that in 2016, along Bumgarner, and we mentioned Cueto and Samardzija. Now, the one unclear person that we don't know if we're going to get something out of is Matt Cain.
Yeah.
The last few years have not been kind to him in terms of his health.
Yeah. It's gotten to the point where this year, not sure what his contract situation is, but this year is a year where he really, really has to prove himself. There was a time when he was a top-notch pitcher in the game, but his poor health has really sidetracked him the last year or two.
I know. And he's really got to have a great season. Honestly, I think they're going to end up putting him in the number 5 spot with all the pitchers that they...
Maybe that's not such a bad idea, because after Bumgarner and Samaja and Cueto, not necessarily in that order,
Hixson really is going to be their number
and
one.
Heston.
I think he's going to be their number one. Bumgarner is going to be their number two. I expect Cueto. I know, even though some people say, what, you're not going to put him number one? No, I think he's going to be their number three. Then Samaja is going to be their four. This is a team that really, they could have one of the best rotations in baseball next year. That's the crazy thing about them. And Angel Pagan.
Yeah, Angel Pagan, a guy who's basically been a forgotten man because he's had his own health issues. Could this be the year that he bounces back and does a contribution for them?
Especially with the hip injuries, which is almost tough at times to come back from. And, I love their catcher, Buster Posey.
Right now, I would say that he is probably one of the 5 best catchers in baseball, which is really saying a lot considering there's other guys like Matt Wieters when he's healthy, of course, Yadier Molina, and several others.
And the Rockies this year, you mentioned they are rebuilding. They signed Chad Qualls, who's a veteran relief pitcher. Jake McGee, Jason Mott, who's been with several teams, including, I believe, the Braves and was with the Cardinals.
Yep, and also pitched briefly for the Cubs.
Tyler Chatwood, is coming back from Tommy John surgery, looking to get that number 5 spot. That's another team that's going to have a number 5 spot competitively. And prospect Tom Murphy could be Nick Hundley's replacement for 2017, not this year. But we could get a good look into what he can do at spring. But you mentioned the Diamondbacks.
Yeah.
One of the biggest moves of the offseason was when the Diamondbacks made the deal to get Zach Greinke from L.A. after he opted out of his contract.
That was such a coup for the D-backs to steal them from big market L.A. the way they did. Now, the question is, can he solidify that pitching staff that they have?
And it's not just him they made the move for. They got Shelby Miller, too, in the deal.
Which is pretty ballsy considering that Shelby Miller was a colossal disappointment with the Braves last year. Is it as easy as a change of scenery for him to make a complete turnaround?
I think it could. I like who their president is for the Diamondbacks. And you know what? Patrick Corbin. This could be his comeback season. 2 years ago, he had one of the best breakout all-star seasons in 2014. Unfortunately, he had that injury. Wasn't playing much in 2015. Now this year, Corbin, along with Greinke and Miller, could form a really good 1-2-3 for that Diamondbacks rotation. Tyler Clippard, you know what? Yes, I know a lot of Met fans, cringe at the thought of him, but he is going to be with the team. And you put him with Brad Ziegler, who they were close to trading.
Yeah.
They were close to letting him go, and they decided to keep him. Now at least they have a reason to keep him, even though, yes, it's Tyler Clippard.
Yeah.
But Yasmani Tomas, could this be his MVP season? Could he really have that big bat year? And then the Dodgers, now that Greinke's gone, what's he going to do for their number 1 guy?
Well, it's not like they're completely devoid of pitchers. I mean, there's still Hyunjin Ryu. That's when he's got a really good arm. I mean, he's already proven that he could be a really solid pitcher for them. And, of course, there's
Kenta Maeda, who they made the deal for.
Yeah, Kenta Maeda, the latest Japanese phenom, and also the constant in that staff, Clayton Kershaw.
And they made the deal to get Scott Kazmir.
Which is a move that I don't want to necessarily say is under the radar, but is pretty underrated considering that Kazmir has had a couple of solid seasons.
And then you got the Padres, a team that's a work in progress.
It seems like they've been a work in progress for about 5 to 10 years now.
Remember when last season they made all those crazy maneuvers?
And it bombed miserably on them, so much that they basically had to start all over again from scratch.
Yeah, they got rid of Craig Kimbrell, Joaquin Benoit, Jed Giorco, Justin Upton, Ian Kennedy left in free agency. It's really it's going to be a different season, that's for sure.
As far as the Central Division is concerned, last year was a dynamite regular season for the Cardinals. And just as dynamite of a season for the Chicago Cubs. And they wound up squaring off against each other for the very first time in a playoff series. And it was the Cubs that came away the upset winners. And, of course, the Cubs had to go through the other playoff team, the Pirates, to get to the Cardinals before getting swept by the Mets. But you look at what the Cubs did over the summer, or over the winter, rather, trading away Starlin Castro. But then it was the guys that they brought in. The big acquisition was Jason Hayward.
Oh, yes.
And the other acquisition,
for the Cubs. Yeah.
And the other acquisition that they brought in, pitcher John Lackey.
Oh, yeah. John Lackey, unfortunately, ever since he went from L.A. to Boston, it was one good season and a complete mess for him in Boston. So he had to get, and then, of course, he was shanghaied to St. Louis after that. So it really, I think it was him and Hayward going from St. Louis to Chicago to a division rival, nonetheless. That's going to be really interesting when they have to play each other during the regular season. And really, the other move that the Cubs made was Ben Zobrist, coming from the World Series winning Royals.
Yeah, that was only made because Ben's former manager, Joe Madden, is running the show in Chicago right now. Of course, he wanted to play for his former manager once again because Joe Madden is just that kind of guy.
And then how about
in
the
addition
Pirates?
to the fact that he is a tremendous manager. As far as the Pirates are concerned, they've been a real contender for the last 4 seasons now.
Jung Ho Kang, I think, was a great acquisition from South Korea at their shortstop position. And, this year they made some pitching moves. They got Neftali Feliz, who was with the Texas Rangers. They got Juan Nicasio. Of course, they made the move to get John Neese in the deal for Neil Walker. So right now, the pitching, I think, could improve this year. But they're hitting, of course. When you got Andrew McCutchen, probably one of the best hitters in all of baseball, on your team.
In addition to being one of the best defensive center fielders in baseball.
So right there, that's why their team is always going to be great. But the Cardinals, with Randall Grichuk and Stephen Piscotty, a great outfield duo.
Yeah.
Very young players who have so many years on their career. And, of course, Holiday. They still have Matt Holiday.
Matt Holiday, and, of course, managed by Mike Matheny, a former catcher in his own right.
And Adam Wainwright, you know what? Could he have a comeback player of the year type of season?
It's quite possible. But then again, it depends on his health, though, because he's had so many health issues the last couple of years. As far as the Reds and the Brewers are concerned, well, I wouldn't necessarily say count them out, but right now, at least the Brewers have a little bit more of a shelf life down the road than the Reds do. The Reds have got major rebuilding to do.
At least the Brewers were merciful in sending Segura to the Diamondbacks and letting Chris Davis go to the Athletics.
Yeah.
So they don't have to be around for this rebuilding season. And you talk about the Reds, man. Everything is going to surround on Jay Bruce and Brandon Phillips.
And now that Todd Frazier has been traded away, it looks like everything falls on Bruce and Phillips to try and pick up the slack.
I know. It's really unfair to them, but this is just the nature of the beast. They got the LA Angels this year.
Yeah, crossing over to the American League, we look at the Western Division first. It was the Angels that wound up getting edged out for a playoff spot. It seems like ever since Albert Pujols signed that big contract of his, he just has not been able to meet any type of expectations. The numbers are there, but the expectations are not.
And their billionaire owner, Arte Moreno, says they are at that luxury tax threshold of $189 million. That's, because of all the deals that they made. You mentioned, of course, the Albert Pujols deal right there being a part of it. And then, you know what? Garrett Richards. This is a year where he's really going to have something. Jared Weaver, C.J. Wilson, Andrew Heaney.
Yeah.
This rotation really has to take this team from add the abyss this season and get them back to the playoffs.
Yep, and of course last year's champions were the Texas Rangers, who caught a lot of people by surprise. Although when you think about it, all it took was for everybody to be back in their best health in order to contend for a title. Now the question, one of the questions for them this year is exactly what is of Justin Hamilton's health, or Josh Hamilton's health, I should say, because his knee has been really killing him.
See what happens right there, for him. But the Athletics, their bullpen situation is really what's on my mind right now. The fact that they only converted 28 out of 53 saves, they had a paltry 4.6 ERA for their closers. Their closing situation really has to improve this season. And, they did get John Axford, Mark Shishibsky, whose name is really hard to pronounce.
Mark Repchimsky, yeah.
And Ryan Madsen, who's been around the league for many years. If you look at his years, he was with the Philadelphia Phillies at one point. But, and the number 5 starter job, which has always been the thing with a lot of these teams, the number 5 starter job is really something that a lot of these teams are looking to settle the issue on.
Yeah, then you have Houston and Seattle. Houston was a surprise playoff team last year, became the wild card, beat the Yankees in the wild card game, then lost. They were actually 6 outs away from going to the ALCS before blowing that lead in Game 4 to the Royals. But when you think about it, the Astros really grew by leaps and bounds last season. Made a couple of changes to try and improve on things for this year.
They were 5 outs away from beating the Royals. Imagine that. You're 5 outs away from closing them out, and you let them come back into the game. That's got to eat at them right there.
Yep.
Their motive, that has been burned in their mind since October. Now that baseball's about to begin, the Astros want to redeem themselves. And what they did was they made a surprising move to get Doug Fister on a 1-year deal in a 3-team trade involving the Nationals.
So much for all of that talk that the Astros are a poorly run organization. Getting Doug Fister was a great idea. Add him to Dallas Keuchel, who's the reigning Cy Young Award winner in the American League. And what do you got? You got a much improved pitching staff there.
But Evan Gaz is healthy. He did have off-season hernia surgery.
Yeah.
Let's hope he will be able to come back for the beginning of this Astros season. But
then you have Seattle, which was a colossal disappointment. The year after, colossal disappointment the last 2 years to be exact, ever since they signed Robinson Cano, a guy who has done all he could. There was even some rumblings that maybe he was unhappy in Seattle, but he's made it loud and clear he's going to stick it out as long as he can with the Mariners.
And you know what? Yes, they did make a trade for Wade Miley. They did, and they re-signed Iwakuma to go along with King Felix.
And this is the same Isashi Iwakuma who wound up having a deal with the Dodgers canceled because of a failed physical. Now he returns to Seattle on a 1-year deal. Go figure.
And, what's really crazy about the Chicago White Sox.
Yep, turning to the Central Division right now. If I'm not mistaken, weren't they the team that wound up acquiring Todd Frazier?
Yep. And they're looking to get Dexter Fowler, who still is out there. Hasn't been signed in Knight or Ian Desmond they're trying to take. But yes, they did acquire Brett Lawrie. They did get Todd Frazier. They do have a Jose Abreu, who 2 years ago was the Rookie of the Year sensation, who had over 30 home runs. And
it's looking more and more like Abreu is going to have a long and healthy career in the majors. Now, as far as the rest of the division is concerned,
the Minnesota Twins.
Yeah, the Minnesota Twins, who right now might have one of the 10 best farm systems in baseball. A lot of talk has been surrounding their young outfield prospect, Dexter Fowler, a guy who has 5-tool potential but has been really crippled by injuries in the last year or so. So could this be the year that he finally makes the jump to the Twins full-time to lead them to bigger and better things?
But you know what? The thing that I want to see, Byron Buxton. That's who I'm really excited about for this season, to see what he can do further in his career.
That's what I'm thinking of. I'm thinking of Byron Buxton.
Byron Buxton. And then you got the first 3 spots in rotation. Irvin Santana will not have to go through a suspension this year. You know what? Phil Hughes will be their number 1, which is, I can't even believe I'm even saying those words.
Yeah,
and Kyle Gibson.
Yeah, and also Phil Hughes has a brand new contract to work with, so he's got a lot of confidence going into the season.
Who would have thought I'd be saying Phil Hughes at number 1 spot in the rotation?
Especially after the way he went out of the Yankees with a whimper. But all of the noise in the Central Division was made by Detroit. Not only did their longtime boss, Dave Dombrowski, leave to go to Boston, but they were still able to have themselves one of the busiest off seasons in a long time, signing Jordan Zimmerman and Justin Upton to big contracts.
And Mike Pelfrey.
And also getting Mike Pelfrey, too. it'll be interesting to see how Pelfrey does with a change of scenery, but getting Jordan Zimmerman to go with a pitching staff that includes one Justin Verlander is going to be really interesting. I'm not sure if overpaying the way they did for Justin Upton was such a good idea, but is it as easy as changing scenery for him to try and finally put up the numbers that we know he's capable of?
It's always the possibility with any player. It doesn't matter what sport it is. Sometimes a change of scenery does any person a world of good. So he could be the person to replace Cespedes in that outfield. Hopefully, he doesn't have his strikeout issues that have plagued him, unfortunately. As for the person that really I want to look for this year is Justin Verlander.
Yeah.
I want to see him go back to Cy Young form. In the last 11 games of 2015, he had a 2.12 ERA. He really showed a lot of encouragement to the Tigers fans that there's plenty more left in the tank and that he could come back to form this season.
And I also want to see what Miguel Cabrera can do. I mean, he's been really hampered by injuries in the last year. Of course, the team in the Central, just like the team in the entire American League, and for all of baseball, for that matter, was the Kansas City Royals. Re-signing Alex Gordon the way they did really caught a lot of people by surprise, especially considering that he was as good as gone when the off season took place.
And how about the craziness they had for the last two spots in their rotation? Medlin, Young, and Danny Duffy competing for two of those spots.
Mm-hmm. And the Royals are going to be starting the regular season with a rematch of the World Series with the Mets. I wonder if there's still any ill will between the teams, especially after Noah Syndergaard blew a high, hard one past the leadoff man in Game 3 last year. But to round out the Central Division, Cleveland is the team that rounds out the Central, and
a lot of one-year deals they made, especially Juan Uribe.
Whole bunch of one-year deals all around. I really feel sorry for Terry Francona because he deserves so much more.
And then you got the AL East finally. The Tampa Bay Rays, they let Jake McGee go to Colorado for Corey Dickerson to really improve their outfield because they definitely need some added bats to the organization. And that was the big move that they made for them for themselves. The Baltimore Orioles, I think, made probably the biggest splash in the last few days, getting the last big free agent left in starting pitching, Giovanni Gallardo, to sign a 3-year, $35 million deal with them.
That was a real big coup for them, especially considering that Gallardo has been a proven pitcher in his short career.
And now, because of the fact that Wayne Chen's with Miami, they needed a big arm to really help to give some competitive balance in this division, and it really does. And then they added Dexter Fowler.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, they're really discussing a 2-year, $24 million deal. They're looking to add him, and I think that's going to happen at some point. Because they really need some outfield presence as well. Since Nick Markakis left to go to Atlanta. This really could be a big move for them. Then you got, of course, the New York.
In our neck of the woods, the Yankees didn't necessarily have the busiest of off seasons because they were the only team to not sign a free agent, which really goes against type when you think of the Yankees because they've made their living all across baseball and professional sports, for that matter, by signing free agents.
Well, their name was attached to David Price with so many other teams, but they weren't willing to spend the kind of money that Boston did.
And quite frankly, nor should they. You know why? Because as good as David Price is, he has had more than his fair share of trips to the disabled list. But the Yankees did make a couple of moves. One of the most interesting moves that they made was making a deal with the Twins to get the backup outfielder, Aaron Hicks, a guy with a lot of quickness on the bases who really was not given a fair shake, in my eyes, by the Twins as a hitter. He could be the guy to probably replace Carlos Beltran in right field down the road. And there was also the big deal to get Starlin Castro to play second base every day. I mean, granted, he's not an everyday second baseman. He's a shortstop. But you put him in there with Didi Gregorius up the middle of that infield, I would think the Yankees are going to be turning more than their fair share of double plays this season.
Oh, without a doubt. And this is the year, though, that the Yankee fans are going to be happy because the Yankees will be able to get a lot of contracts off the books. CeCe Sabathia's contract will be gone.
So will Mark Teixeira's.
And along with Beltran's and A-Rod's. Their deals finish.
Actually, A-Rod's deal is going to be done after next season, but there is going to be a lot of money coming off the table within the next 2 years.
So that gives them the opportunity to really go out there and spend big if there's a free agent worth spending the money on. But Aroldis Chapman, that is really probably the most interesting offseason news that for the Yankees, acquiring him to be in the bullpen.
And to think, they basically acquired him from the Reds for second and third tier prospects. I think the only reason why they were able to get him was because the Reds really wanted to be rid of a real problem child on their roster. And there's also the fact that he's still facing a possible suspension from Major League Baseball because of his domestic violence incident that took place with his girlfriend last winter.
I know that's the only unfortunate. That's really the unfortunate thing about him is that. And how about Sabathia after the alcohol issues that he had in the offseason? Will he be able to come back this season?
Put it this way: at least he's 100% healthy now. He's not throwing as hard as he has in the past, but in this case, he might have to reinvent himself as a pitcher, which also reminds us, is this pitching staff going to be able to stay in one piece? Because Sabathia, Nathan Eovaldi, who was great before his elbow trouble, Masahiro Tanaka, who has pitched very well for the Yankees in spite of a partially torn MCL ligament in his elbow. And those are the three prime suspects that have had problems with injuries. There's also the matter of one of their top pitching prospects, Luis Severino, a guy who has number one starter potential down the road. Is he going to be the guy that the Yankees are going to rely on once Sabathia and his contract come off the books? Because he has been really looked at as a potential ace, and there's also a whole bunch of other prospects that the Yankees have been looking at. Speaking of whom, one of those prospects, Greg Bird, is going to miss the whole year because he underwent shoulder surgery. That's a huge loss at first base for the Yankees.
And that's a lot of pressure on Teixeira to stay healthy this year. Because after Bird took over, he did have 15 home runs in place of Teixeira. He had over 30 RBIs, in fact. He had almost a 300 batting average in place of Teixeira. So losing a guy that could at least take some relief off you, that's going to put the onus on Teixeira to really have a very healthy 100% season and really have to show the Yankees organization that he's ready to take that next step this season. As for, the world of sports,
we failed to mention two other teams in the Eastern Division. One was Boston, who, by the way, not only got Dave Dombrowski, but the other Dave, specifically David Price, and also got Craig Kimbrell to be a stalwart in the bullpen. And there's also the Blue Jays, who won the division last year and made this really great run to the American League Championship Series. But now there's a big question surrounding the Blue Jays. What's going to happen with Jose Bautista? He's in his walk year, and he's made it loud and clear he does not want to talk contract unless he gets what he's demanding. So he's already made his demands known.
If that's the case, if I'm the Mets, nah, I'm kidding. We already have enough outfielders. We don't need another outfield big bat that's going to cost us north of $100 million. That's for another team like, say, the Los Angeles Angels, which I wouldn't be shocked if they're in that conversation next year, or say the Texas Rangers.
Wouldn't surprise me.
But
now, in the other parts of sports, just yesterday, they crowned a new race car king at the Daytona 500, and it happened by this much.
4 inches. The man, Denny Hamlin, who, by the way, became the first racer for Joe Gibbs Racing to win at Daytona since 1993 when Dale Jarrett did it.
You think Joe Gibbs is really enjoying his second career on the track? Because right now, he's looking really good as an owner.
Well, they had 10 victories in the 2015 Spring Cup season.
Precisely my point. Joe Gibbs has become, once again, a star of the auto racing circuit. He's really found his niche in this sport.
And this is the first win for Toyota as well to win at Daytona yesterday. One of the saddest parts about yesterday's race, of course, they call it the Great American Race, the start of the new NASCAR season, was this kid named Chase Elliott, who a week before when they had the pole race, to be number one, he became the youngest to be a pole sitter for Daytona. On the 19th lap in the four corner, unfortunately, he was in the middle of the track between a bunch of cars, and unfortunately, he got into a bit of an accident. His car was spinning. In fact, it ended up going onto the turf. The hood of his car was latched off, and he was done for the rest of the race.
Yeah, but the bottom line is he got himself his victory, and he can move on to the next race, depending on what that is in the NASCAR circuit.
Oh, it's going to be this coming Sunday at Atlanta Motor Speedway. So for Denny Hamlin to get this first win, great. Tony Stewart is in his last year, but he's injured. He's not going to be able to race for a while. So We'll see how that turns out. As for Dale Earnhardt Jr., unfortunately, for Hendrick Motorsports and all that, he was involved in a crash too as well, which is a little too familiar, unfortunately.
Yeah.
His late father and all that. Well, I think that was at Talladega and all that. But at least he's fine. I hope to see him win. His father was probably one of the greatest of all time.
Yeah.
And Joey Logano, I don't know if he didn't repeat. He would have been the first person over 20 years if he would have won to repeat. In other world of sports, the Barbasol PBA Professional Bowler Association World Championship, Graham Foch, the first Canadian to ever win a bowling championship, defeated New York's very own Ryan Simonelli from Cheektowaga, New York. 299 to 244 was the final score after 10 frames. And Norm Duke, one of the great veterans of the sport, who has 33 career championships, fourth most all time, didn't get that elusive victory at the Players World Championship. In the world of the PGA Northern Trust Open, Bubba Watson won his second time at Riviera in the last 3 years, capping off with a 17-foot birdie on the 17th hole. And he shot 3 under 68 to have a one-shot victory over Scott Korak and Adam Scott.
And, of course, last night, WWE had Fastlane take place. And I think this guy might have been on to something when this reporter for CBS Sports website said that it was probably the most predictable pay-per-view of the young season so far, because everybody who was looked at to win did win.
Oh, yes. Kalisto retained his United States title in a pre-show 2 or 3 falls match against Alberto Del Rio, which I don't like the pre-show dark matches. Those are for people who are jobbers, not mainstay wrestlers. I think it's insulting.
They might as well just include that in the entire card instead of having it as a pre-show event.
I know. Instead, you had Curtis Axel and R-Truth in the main event, in the main pay-per-view.
Wow.
That's a pre-show match. That's a pre-show match.
Wow.
And Axel beat R-Truth because his pinheads and the Social Outcasts, a new group, by the way, that was formed with Curtis Axel, Bo Dallas, Adam Rose, and the guy that was in 3-man band. The guy with the red hair.
Yeah, I think I know who you're talking about. Yeah.
Yeah, I can't remember his name, but the fact is those 4 boneheads are together in one faction. I feel bad for Curtis Axel. He comes from a great wrestling family. This is where it's at. Anyway, the Divas tag team match, you had Sasha Banks, Becky Lynch defeated Team Bad, which was by the bank statement. Sasha Banks, she's got a great future ahead of her.
Yeah.
People love the boss.
Yeah, I just hope that she gets used properly, though, because I don't like the way the directions of some of these wrestlers is going.
Kevin Owens retained his IC title against Dolph Ziggler. Dolph Ziggler is a guy who's been in the mid-card at times for so many years.
Yeah.
He's a good wrestler. He's got heart. He's got talent. The guy never gives up.
Yeah.
Even if you knock him down, he gets right back up like the Chumbawamba song. But unfortunately, the pop-up powerbomb did him in. He had a 6-man tag match. Ryback, Kane, and Big Show actually beat the Wyatt family.
Wow.
Isn't that shocking?
I should be, but you consider the fact that these are two mammoth human beings that we're talking about here. Really, it really should not be.
Along with Ryback, don't let his size fool you. The guy, he may not be as tall as these guys, but he's got brute strength.
Yeah.
And of course, Charlotte defeated Brie Bella in the Divas title match via the figure 8 submission hold.
And it took me forever to find out that Charlotte Flair is basically gone back to, or not gone back, but converted to being a heel now. But then again, she's Ric Flair's daughter. Ric Flair did the exact same thing for over 40 years.
The dirtiest player in the game. And then AJ Styles, probably the most touted free agent in all of wrestling, who debuted at the Royal Rumble last month in the number 3 spot, lasted 28 minutes, defeated Chris Jericho in their third match against each other in the tiebreaker with the calf crusher, which is an insane submission move that he has. This guy is electric to watch. I love AJ Styles. I'm a big AJ Styles fan. I like his entrance music. I like his charisma. I like the tattoo of AJ he has on the side of his stomach. I like everything about this guy. In fact, he's going to be at the WWE show that me and my mom are going to March 25th. His debut at MSG.
Wow.
I don't know who he's facing. I can't wait. And then finally, the big match of the evening, the triple threat number 1 contenders match. The winner has the right to face Triple H at WrestleMania 32 for the title. And you had Dean Ambrose, you had Roman Reigns, and the Beast, Brock Lesnar.
And who came away the winner?
It was Roman Reigns. During the match, it was really Reigns and Ambrose trying to knock out Lesnar. Predictably so. Come on. You're not going to go one-on-one against him. You got to have those two try to take him out of the equation. And they did. They even put him through 2 tables.
Yep.
Yeah, they put him through the Spanish announcers table first, which always seems to be the table that people like to go after. You know, that's always been the case.
It's been that way for years and years and years, and I really don't get why.
And then they put him through the American announcers table. The Germans actually had a broadcasting booth.
Interesting.
And their booth didn't even get messed up. Isn't that something?
Yep.
But in the end, what's his name? Lesnar was about to do the F5 to Ambrose. And actually, no, what happened was Ambrose had a chair. He hit his own friend Roman Reigns. He hit Lesnar.
Yep.
But in the end, even when he was doing all that maneuvering with hitting Lesnar out of the ring, Reigns did the spear right on Ambrose. Pinned him 1, 2, 3.
Yep. And in other WWE news, you probably didn't hear about this, but there was a little bit of a controversy involving Titus O'Neil. Did you hear about this?
Oh, yes. Last Monday night when they had the retirement announcement of Daniel Bryan, at the end of the event, when everybody was just leaving the arena and McMahon was leaving, Titus O'Neil lightly touched McMahon's arm. He didn't take that too kindly, almost to the point where he wanted to fire him, and Joey Mercury and Triple H had to convince Vince not to do that. They had to convince him not to fire Titus because this is a guy who is a main card, who should be at the top.
Yeah, he should be at the top. In fact, I think he should be given consideration for a potential championship down the road. If not the WWE title, maybe even the U.S. title or the IC title.
But they don't really do that for him. And WWE rarely does a lot in terms of title opportunities for African-American wrestlers. Booker T is one of the few exceptions, but not many.
And also The Rock.
The Rock. But Bobby Lashley, when he was with WWE, never given title consideration.
I don't get this. I really don't get this at all, especially considering that there have been countless African-American superstars that have gone through WWE.
R-Truth, for God's sakes, I think could be a title contender.
Yeah.
And they give him these dumb gimmicks. Kofi Kingston was a title holder at one point.
Yeah.
And now they put him in a stupid gimmick with the New Day. For God's sakes, Biggie Langston is a part of this goon squad.
Yeah.
I don't understand. They wear male appendages for unicorn heads. Like, it's so cute with their stupid trombone.
I don't know what they're trying to accomplish with this, to be honest with you.
It's like, it's a really bad Nation of Domination gone wrong. No, sorry, I'm not even going to say it because
that's an insult to the Nation of Domination because those guys were legit. That was a legit storyline that they had going.
They did, yeah, that's true. They were a good group. Farouk, of course, Mark Henry. You had,
The Godfather, of course.
Bobby Brown, or was it Dusty? something Brown. There was a guy named Brown that was in the group, and Ahmed Johnson.
Yeah.
I loved Ahmed Johnson, the
Yeah.
Pearl River Slam. Mm-hmm. But after what happened with getting back to titles and Neil, he was suspended for 90 days originally. Then it was lopped down to 60 because of the outrage online. I think he should leave the company like Batista advised him to do.
When Batista, a guy who's been around the block more than once with that company, gives advice like that, maybe you should take it because he knows exactly what he's had to go through in order to make himself the superstar that he is right now.
Well, it was unfair with Batista when they made him come in for that first week back in 2014. He automatically wins the Royal Rumble, not even being there after 4 years, and that was the year when Daniel Bryan wasn't even involved in the match.
Yeah.
So Batista was put in an unfair situation at that time. He really was. They did him wrong.
Yeah.
They've done some superstars a lot wrong. Vince McMahon is no angel. And then he touts about how it needs to be a professional environment. When you have a show on WWE Network like Christian Edge, who promote their show being balls out entertainment wild.
Say no more, man. But this isn't the only controversy that WWE is involved in. You mentioned Daniel Bryan and his retirement ceremony. Did you know Daniel Bryan, 6 months into his wrestling career, and this is going back 16 years, suffered his first concussion, and it turned out to be the first of countless concussions that he suffered in his entire career. Now, there is a thing going on involving WWE in which a major lawsuit, a concussion lawsuit, is being filed against WWE. One of the wrestlers involved in this lawsuit happens to be a former WWE superstar, Vito, Staten Island's own Vito. In case you may not remember, Vito not only wrestled for WWE, he was also in WCW for a short time. His most famous gimmick was where he was the toughest guy to wear a dress. And in the latter part of his career with WWE, he wrestled every single match in a dress.
And there was sort of this, they had an Italian sort of faction going. Vito.
The FBI.
Yeah, the FBI.
It was him, Chuck Palumbo, and Nunzio. He was also 1/3 of the WWE version of the FBI. Well, now Vito is a part of this concussion lawsuit, and he had some really interesting things to say about Daniel Bryan's retirement. He said, if it had not been for this lawsuit, Daniel Bryan would still be forced to wrestle, even in his poor condition.
So really, this wasn't really as unanimous as they made it out to be. This was really because of the lawsuit.
Yes. And trust me when I say this, there is a long line of wrestlers that is involved in this lawsuit against WWE. Not going to name any names, but the list is very lengthy.
Is Jim Anvil Neidhart a part of this?
It wouldn't surprise me if he was.
I know. Well, WWE has screwed him over at times.
Yeah.
And he's done Jake the Snake. They've hurt him, and he's hurt himself, unfortunately.
Yeah.
They've done wrong with Razor Ramon. There's countless wrestlers that have been wronged by WWE. And yet I still watch the show. I still go to the shows because I like I like it, but at the same time, now knowing this, it's sort of eating at me.
Yeah.
That this happened. But anyway, the top 25 of college basketball came out this week.
And Villanova is still number 1.
It's really not that shocking, but Kansas is number 2 in the country, and this guy Landon Lucas is unbelievable. Villanova, man, Daniel Chafu, I love watching him play.
2 double-digit wins in Big East Conference action as of press time. Don't be surprised if you see them maybe be the number 1 overall seed in the upcoming NCAA tournament, which is right around the corner.
How about the Cavs of Virginia, number 3, winning 8 of the last 9, and they would have won the Duke game had not been for a questionable traveling by Grayson Allen that
did not even get called.
And tied for 3rd, you have the Oklahoma Sooners. Buddy Hield, 29 points against the West Virginia Mountaineers in their 14-point victory.
And Xavier is now 5th, and it seems like every single game they're getting more and more stronger, especially with their perimeter shooting. And Xavier's going to play Villanova
Again this time.
for Big East Conference supremacy Wednesday night.
They lost by 31 points last night. Sumner had to be carried out on a stretcher in that game. This time, though, in the last 5 games, he's averaged 15 points in the last 5. You got the Michigan State Spartans. They are a great assist team. When it comes to assisting, they lead the country with 72.3% of assists on baskets. The Tar Heels of North Carolina
Came off a big win, blowout win over Miami, a fellow top 25 squad.
beating Justin Jackson with 15 points in that game. Then you got the Iowa Hawkeyes in number 8. They did have a loss against Penn State. So for Penn State,
That's a bad loss right there because Penn State is near the bottom of the totem pole in the Big Ten.
The Arizona Wildcats, unbelievable, number 9, 6 straight victories, number 1 in the Pac-12. The Terrapins are number 10 in the country. They beat Ohio State by 35 in January 16. They only had 1 double-digit victory since then.
And yesterday, totally disappointing loss to a Michigan team. Which,
Actually, they won that game.
Nope, Michigan won yesterday.
Oh, yeah, by 4
Michigan
points.
won yesterday by 4 in a game that, quite frankly, Maryland should have had.
The Cardinals, after their postseason ban, they've lost 2 out of the last 3 at number 11.
But then they wound up beating Duke in a game that featured a near fist fight in the game, especially after one of the Duke players wound up getting elbowed in the face,
That's right.
going for a loose ball.
And Krzyzewski even got a technical foul in that game, too. How about the Hurricanes are playing Virginia tonight.
Yep.
Big Monday. The Oregon Ducks are number 2 in the country. They're undefeated in Eugene, and they're the only team to actually beat Arizona at home. Isn't that something to say?
Yep.
The Mountaineers of West Virginia, you know what? They've had 3 losses in the last 4 games against Kansas, Texas, and Oklahoma. All admirable losses, by the way.
Yeah.
These were tough teams you're going up against. The Blue Devils of Duke, number 15, had a big 1-point victory over North Carolina this past week in their annual, one of the greatest rivalries ever in history. Kentucky, since Derek Wills has joined the lineup, they've really done well with him. 5-0 when he scores in double figures in those 10 games. The Iowa State Cyclones need to feature Jameel McKay a little more.
Yeah.
The 18 Hoosiers, they had a big, they
had their showdown with Purdue over the weekend.
They've had 12 straight wins since losing to Duke.
Yeah.
The Baylor Bears at number 19, they've had a pretty up and down year in the round robin of the Big 12. You mentioned the Purdue Boilermakers. A.J. Hammond's on that team.
Yep.
The Texas A&M Aggies are just a half game behind Kentucky for the SEC. The Notre Dame Fighting Irish, they lost by 1 at Georgia Tech. But
Another bad loss.
Georgia Tech also beat Virginia this year. So
Tough team to figure out.
And then the SMU Mustangs, since they started 18-0 in their postseason ban season, they've gone 4-4 since.
And on the women's side, the big story is about not who's ranked, but who's not anymore. Do you know that Tennessee dropped out of the top 25 for the first time in 31 years?
That is really shocking, to say the least. It's still another
And
year
when you
for
think
Connecticut.
about it, it's also a testament to the Tennessee program in general. Now, with about 90 seconds left, let's wrap up what happened in the NBA. Of course, we had the All-Star game. The trade deadline was this past Thursday. No superstar wound up going anywhere. So there were a whole bunch of minor deals that were being made.
Like Courtney Lee was sent to Charlotte, of course, and in exchange.
Tobias Harris wound up going to Detroit, and Lance Stevenson wound up going from the Clippers to the Grizzlies.
Yeah, but no major trades. Monroe didn't get traded, and neither did Al Horford, get traded from Atlanta at all, or Jeff Teague. So there were no big trades. And, of course, in the world of hockey, Jaromir Jagr is still at it again. Had 2 goals this past weekend against Winnipeg, winning 3-1. 745 career goals, 3rd most all-time passing Brett Hull.
And in our neck of the woods, the Nets and Knicks squared off against each other, and the Nets wound up beating the Knicks. Then the Knicks turned around and got a big win over the Timberwolves to snap a 5-game losing streak. And what did the Nets do? Lose to the Hornets. And the Rangers got a huge win in overtime against the Red Wings at the Garden last night. Henrik Lundqvist was just dynamite. And the Rangers are moving also closer to a really high seed in the Stanley Cup playoff positioning.
And next week is the trade deadline for NHL. And by the way, Cristiano Ronaldo got his 33rd goal in UEFA Champions League, helping Real Madrid beat AS Roma 2-0.
I'm going to take you out. Take us out, man.
And the Combine's happening this past week. Thank you so much for watching in the Bleachers. We'll see you here next week on CTV. Good night, Staten Island.